Hi, my name's Alistair Ballantyne, and you're listening to the Big Suit Podcast. This is episode 11, where we will be taking a look at some of the various little pieces of nonsense when it comes to advice around relationships, dating, and connecting with those that you like, but doing so in such a way that you probably end up putting them off. Now, all of this is stemming from a lot of conversations that I've been having this year, not just in my personal life, but also in my professional life as well. And one of my avenues of work as a multifaceted, multi talented individual is reading tarot and astrology for people. Now, as someone who comes from a history and lineage of spiritual sensitivity, practice, and awareness, these are tools to help us come to a deeper understanding of ourselves, among many other things, but that's the angle that I'd like to work on. However, a lot of people like to use these practices and tools to find out, when is my love coming? When is this person going to pluck me out of obscurity into this wonderful, beautiful relationship? I'm not going to do anything other than sit back and let them do all the work. You would not believe some of the questions I have been asked, and you would not believe some of the way people have responded when I have told them, well, I see XYZ happening, but it is all pending on action. For those of us in the work who have ethics and we have a sense of accountability and integrity, we're always working on a solution-focused basis, and we're advising people to take different types of actions, and we use these practices to help people improve their lives, but we don't use it to negate the free will of others. So, as you can imagine, as someone who is quite personable, I do have a lot of people talking to me outside of my work, saying to me, in the work you do, you must talk a lot about relationships and love with people. I'm like, well, yes, I do. I'm a Libra sun with a Cancer rising. And for me, love and connection is one of life's most fascinating things. And I love talking about it. I love to experience it. I love to see people falling into it and enjoying themselves. What I don't like is when people are manipulated, they're abused, or they have this bullshit idea of, oh, this person is my twin flame. They keep treating me like shit. So the abuse is some kind of divine contract. No. That kind of thing doesn't exist, but that's probably for a topic for another time. However, the root of my frustration is because I work online, I have to spend a lot of time engaging with social media, just to get the word out. Let people know I exist, connect with people, and help strengthen the community at large. And it's really frustrating when I see people posting these lukewarm hot takes about love and romance, and if this is what someone's got to do if they want to be with me, and then listening to like the pea-brained podcasters who think that humanity and the human condition and human relationships are essentially business transactions, and they can, and you can quote me on this, fuck off all of the way into the sun. And maybe they'll give us a nice little sparkly light show on the way as they burn up with all of that hot air seeping out of them, and we might see some interesting lights in the sky. But what I find really frustrating is people are taking things like this like gospel. People are, going on certain platforms and watching like the most remedial pop astrology and taking it as truth, punching their synastry data into various different apps instead of working with a reader to look at if someone is compatible or not, and then taking that again as gospel. People are leaning on things like tarot cards to try and define their future for them, define their relationships for them. And to me, this is no different from people who subscribe to very misguided interpretations of religion, where essentially they hand over all of their agency and autonomy to whichever prophet du jour is going to save them today. Whether that's actually a faith-based religion or some weird online cult, it doesn't really matter, because what we're talking about here is anything that removes a sense of agency and autonomy from the realm of relationships and connection should be disregarded entirely. And yes, I am talking about the trad movement as well, but that's not the focus of today's episode. Because it's 2025, the world is going into an unwritten future. We are all disconnected, divided, and isolated, and scared, and freaked out, and angry, and all of these other things. And sometimes it'd just be a little better if you had someone to hold on to. A little bit of warmth in the night, a little bit of tenderness, a bit of pleasure, and understanding, and all of these other things that are just wonderful aspects of the human experience. But unfortunately for us, because we live in a world that somehow thinks that everybody's opinion is valid and we have to take everyone seriously because they're just on the internet and all of this kind of thing, we're listening to a lot of shit ideas. And one of the reasons as well why we're doing this episode today is one of the nicknames I have among some of the practitioners in the community is Dr. Love, because people coming to me time and again, not just for like relationship advice and this kind of thing and how to connect better, but also in the work of EFT. We do a lot of things around self-concept, confidence, and knowing our worth, because it's our self-concept that defines our view of self, because it is the view of self, and our view of self defines our worldview. So then that informs what we believe we deserve, or we can have, or we can't have, and all of this kind of shit. You can have anything you want. You can have anybody you want, kid. You just got to believe in yourself, within reason, of course, because consent is key. So maybe you might want them and they don't want you, and you just can't go in there and grab them by the unmentionables and take whatever you want. That's terrible advice. Terrible. A terrible perspective to have. Okay, so this is by no means an exhaustive list here, and I'm sure that we will revisit this kind of thing. So this is just a bunch of things that I sort of had to put the feelers out, and I thought, oh yeah, these would be interesting to talk about. Because I've no doubt that Dr. Love will return again and again, because he seems to be the character that people want from me most in the work. So why not? Why not? You got to give the people what they want, So our first one is an age-old classic. One of the most classic relationship games, in that never be the first one to text and wait so many hours or days to do it. And you know what? I think that's such bull, because if you go out with someone and you like them and you have a nice time, just tell them. The world could end tomorrow and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to wait until 2:30 tomorrow afternoon because it's going to be exactly 48 hours since we went out, and I'll send that message then. It's within the rooms. Don't bother yourself with this kind of nonsense, because it creates unnecessary uncertainty. Now, one of the unfortunate side effects of social media, smart devices, being accessible 24/7, is this actually creates a compound effect of anxiety, because unfortunately, a lot of people expect now for everyone to be immediately available. I've had people contact me on the app that I work on for readings, and they're saying to me, this person hasn't texted me today, what's going on? And I say, okay, right, let's just reduce the temperature a minute. When did you last hear from them? Because I like to ask some contextual and clarifying questions before we get into the work. And they're like, oh, they messaged me last night. And I'm like, what the bloody hell, and it's creating, and for me, it's upholding that unrealistic expectation that we're placing on one another. Everyone is different. Every relationship that you're going to have of any kind, whether that's a short-term thing or just dating, or or long-term relationship, whatever, it's going to be different depending on who you're with. It will bring different aspects out of you, but for goodness sake, just talk to each other, even if it is weird, even if you feel like your bunghole is clenched so tightly that the carbon will come out as a diamond. There is that much pressure. The point is that If you've had a good time with someone, let them know straight away. And if you've not had a good time with someone, do them the service of letting them know as well. Because while on one hand, we've got this whole thing of like, yes, you must wait for this amount of time before messaging someone, and of course, stoking the fires of anxiety through the lens of immediate accessibility and digital communication. We also have this weird culture of ghosting and blocking, you know? Because why would you spend a period of time with another human being and let's say nothing heinous happened, you go out with someone and you're not feeling the vibe, but they've not done or said anything that is bad, just it's just not vibing. Some folks just block and delete and move on. And I remember reading this one thing on socials. This person was saying, oh, yeah, had this amazing date, felt really good. And then I get home and I'm blocked on everything. It's just like that is some serious dysfunction going on there. And before people come at me saying, oh, what about people who don't deal with conflict well? What about people who are a bit shy? I don't deal with conflict well and I'm shy. And the thing about that is that in my younger years only led to more problems. And if you're the person who has been blocked and you're the person that has been ghosted, that's something that can stay with you. Not everyone can just brush that off, and it doesn't take much to say, nice to meet you, wasn't really feeling it like that, hope you find what you're looking for, all the best, or maybe you meet up with someone and realize that they're better as a friend. You can say that. I've gone on dates with people that have then ended up in like friendship connections as well. Connection is connection and it's something to be explored. And if you're feeling it, let the other person know, because you don't know what processes are going to be going on for them behind the scenes. You don't know what they have been through, and you don't know the effect that your time together may have had on them. And sometimes it's good to strike while the iron is hot, whether that's you want to see them again or you don't. The reason I'm pitching it like this is we have to bring back some of the humanity to the digital landscape. We have to see that behind every profile there is a person. But behind most of the profiles there is a person. Some of them are bot accounts, but of course if you've been out with someone, you really do owe them that communication one way or another, because ultimately, you know creating security with each other is a foundation stone of intimacy. People need to feel safe to be vulnerable with one another, and vulnerability is the doorway through which love passes through. And a lot of the relationship sessions and consultations that I do, if someone has not got the door open, the relationship will not last. Doesn't matter how much you like the person, doesn't matter how much philosophizing you do or where you can see the motivations of their behavior coming from, all this crap. Because ultimately, that is putting the ball in your court, it's putting the responsibility on your shoulders, and it's giving you all of that energy to be the person who tends to the connection. So there's so many things there that can just be, evolved very easily, and there is enough anxiety in the world that we don't need to create any more of it. So that's number one. If you're feeling it, let them know. If you didn't feel it, let them know. Just be kind, be honest, be open. Don't shy away from just sending a message because what's going to be worse. Because when we delay these things, we create an energy around them, and the more that piles up, the more tension there is, and life is too short for nonsense, and we want to be in the energy of being too blessed to be stressed. So that's number one. Second one is keep a roster until someone earns exclusivity. Now, I find this absolutely mental personally, because I'm the kind of guy that I can only really be involved with one person at a time. That just works for me. Hello, Scorpio Venus conjunct Pluto, Scorpio Moon conjunct South Node and Scorpio Saturn. Yes, that's a lot of Scorpio energy. But what it does mean is that it's very difficult for me to entertain more than one energy at a time. And also, personally, it feels a little bit dishonest. Now, I know there's folks out there who, do the whole ENM thing, and, more power to you. I am not one of you. I respect you, but that's not how I can personally move. One of the problems with this, I mean, it's not exactly like a new development that people maybe see more than one person at the same time. But now with the dating apps and swiping culture, and again, it's like, I don't like this person, I'll just get another one. We're not appreciating the nuances of humanity in the individual. We're not appreciating that everybody is different. And when you start to see potential partners as replaceable spare parts, that's some dysfunctional thinking. Because what makes you so perfect? What makes you the person who thinks that there are precision made machine parts for you out there? Because this also comes from, I'm going to call it what it is, and it is a very Victorian view of the world, where we look at the world and humans as a machine or a mechanistic approach, where everything has this mechanical thing. And, I'm not the biggest fan of using reductive and empirical types of data collection for anything in our life that is needing us to have an expansive vision and an expansive way of thinking. Because when we reduce things down to an atomic level, yeah, that's good for understanding some stuff, but like human connection, relationships, emotion, energy, come on. You're only getting a piece of the picture, not the whole view. So when we have this sense of like, oh yes, darling, I'm seeing all of these people, all this kind of stuff, we're not actually then taking the time to dive down into the deeper depths of intimacy. Yes, this is the Scorpio placements talking once again. Because with Scorpio placements, the depths are where we're at home. But what I have noticed is people are scared of intimacy of that level. So it's easy to keep a number of different people around. So if there's some little fluctuation or something is wrong, you can go, no, right, that's it. You're off the roster. I'll see you later. And I find this quite interesting because, again, it's this idea of like having this invisible set of hoops that people have to jump through just to get close to one another. And we're in a crisis in society of disconnection, you know? We've got some of the most regressive political ideologies we've seen this side of color TV, on the march, on the rise. And one of the ways that this stuff thrives is through people in isolation and disconnection from one another. And if we see everything as connected, the way that we approach human connection and relationships and dating and all of these kind of things has to be human, has to be more nuanced. But we're going out and treating it like we're going to McDonald's and ordering Big Macs, where you expect it to be uniformly presented. You know what you're going to get. And it's like, oh, yeah, so I'm seeing this person. And people end up dating these unremarkable shitheads, and people who've got nothing going for them other than like, oh, yes, well, they're making this much money. And with this much money, this is what we're going to... And it just degenerates into this noise that I do not understand. When people are so focused on the material, they're focused on the machine. Some of the greatest love stories are multifaceted, and some of the greatest connections operate on a number of different levels. And one of the treasured memories that I have of something that an ex said to me, she said to me, I like you because I can be my whole self with you. And I thought, right, that's cool. That's exactly the kind of partner I want to be. Someone who doesn't feel like they have to compartmentalize themselves when they're around. That's exactly the kind of partner I want to be. And it's also the kind of advocacy that I encourage within my clients and people I talk to, when I'm not at work as well, that you've got to be your whole self with someone. Someone who just likes an aspect of you, ultimately it's just they like how you look, they don't like who you are. So if we're constantly keeping a roster of people to, who's going to make the cut and all this kind of thing, and you're essentially got this imaginary contest going on in your head of who is going to win my hand and whatnot, it's difficult to then allow those multimodal, multifaceted love and intimate connections develop, because you're not allowing yourself to go into a place of vulnerability with a person. You're not allowing yourself to cultivate a rhythm with someone. And also, like, when it comes to energy, if you have sex with someone, you're sharing your energy with them. You're making a connection with them. There's your whole auric field and all of this kind of stuff coming together. And then there was one of these diagrams I saw years ago, which showed the two chakra columns of the different people in intercourse. Sorry, I just had to do that. It's just and it showed the two chakra columns of the people in intercourse as forming a giant loop. And I thought, oh, right, okay. That's why, in some instances, if I've, over the years thinking back on it, some instances have felt very good. Some have just not felt very pleasant at all. So you've got to be mindful of who you're sharing energy with. And if you're not taking that time to really kind of, really allow yourself to just go through the process with someone, then not only do you not get to know them, you also don't get to know those parts of yourself that are the leading energy in the connection, because we're always learning, we're always growing through love and connection. And I think that when we sort of like take this kind of funnel based approach to connection, we're losing all of that nuance, and you're just looking for a warm body and an organic masturbation aid. I said it, so you don't have to, and I stand by that. Point number 3, no contact, make them chase. This is a big one, I must say, my friends, because there is a lot of difficulty when it comes to actually just connecting with people because of these nonsense rules, and these different ideas that people have about, oh, they've got to do this and that and the other, expecting absolute perfection from others while encouraging and celebrating imperfection within themselves. What I find tricky with this one is no contact is the ultimate mixed message. Because we live in a time where we have more conversations around consent, more conversations around boundaries. We're trying to be more respectful humans now, I saw a post on social media a little while ago which was complaining about, why don't men approach women anymore? And from a lot of our perspective, it's because we see a lot of content and things about women saying that they just want to go out and be with their friends and enjoy themselves and not be harassed, So if we're trying to be more ethical and we're trying to be more conscientious of our engagement with one another, communication is key. It brings us back to that first point around the sort of playing games around how long you're going to wait to text and all of that kind of thing. If you're into it, that's great. Text them. If they're into it, they'll be into it too. If they're not, then it's fine. It might be a bit sad for a few minutes, but you'll be all right. But when it comes to like creating a sense of silence for someone else to reach out, that is a whack energy, I've got to say, because it's emotional manipulation. Because if you have like anxiety, or you maybe have confidence issues or these kind of things, someone suddenly shutting you out, you're going to think that you've done something wrong, and you're going to be going through your head about all of these different things. And just a bit of clarity of communication goes a long, long way. And you have no idea how many times I've done readings, and this is very common when I'm reading in hetero relationships, where it's essentially the woman asking about the man. And I will see that the man is playing it a bit sort of guarded because he doesn't know how to approach her. He's interested, he's into her, and all of these kind of things, but he doesn't know how to approach her. And then they're saying, well, I expect the man to do this. And I'm like, well, there's many different ways that masculinity can be expressed. And going out there and grabbing someone by the hair like a caveman is not the vibe. I tell you that for free, because we're evolving beyond that. So having a more respectful discussion and defining what the parameters and boundaries are in terms of communication is actually quite important. And if you are weaponizing silence to get people to reach out for you, I've been on the receiving end of that before. And this particular aspect, it can create so many other problems from it as well, because when you start getting all in your own head, communication breaks down. Then you maybe it's bringing up issues from your past and this kind of stuff, and then you start projecting that onto the connection in the now, and then it ends up fucking the connection up, or like the other person's like, oh my god, what the hell is all of this? There's so many different things that can go wrong when you start to use silence as a means of like the dangling carrot for other people to come towards you. So a bit more, a bit more conscious awareness is necessary. Now, of course, at the end of a relationship, no contact is probably a good idea, because even if the relationship broke down and you're on good terms, you've both got to get on with your lives. And if you both want to be like friendly with each other, a bit of period of time is always a good thing. So we do have to see this as situational as well. So we can think of it as when people are coming together, but we can also think about it like in the flow of relationship. There's got to be rhythm. There's got to be rhythm, baby. Because otherwise, if there's no rhythm, you can't groove. So yeah, let's not do that, because if we're creating anxiety in people and we're doing it intentionally, that is racking up a karmic debt. Da 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 da. And you don't want anything on that bar tab, because we've all got stuff on that bar tab, and we all have to pay for it through our lessons and experiences in life and our points of growth. So adding stuff like that to it, especially when it involves other people, incurs a very heavy debt. So our next one. This is and our next one, my God, like I nearly went cross-eyed just reading this. Point number 4. If they wanted to, they would. 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 How about I say it in an American accent? If they wanted to, they would. That kind of thing. This is the arch bullshit. This is the stupidest thing, because do you know what? Like, not everyone can. And if you're playing games with someone, or someone's playing games with you, because of course, I don't mean to insult my loyal listeners and viewers as well, for those of you on YouTube, but if someone's doing that to you, or they adopt that stance, or if someone's advocating for that stance with you, run a mile. Because do you know what? Sometimes some people don't know what they're supposed to do. Sometimes people have got struggles to express themselves. And there is a lot more going on in life than your relationship with that person as well. And there is this whole kind of vibe online, where people are like trying to position that it's normal that you become the center of the universe. That ain't normal. That is toxic. And I've had enough of coming up against people who subscribe to this mentality in my personal life and in my professional life, because they are lazy shits that expect things to be handed to them and not put in any work themselves. And I've experienced that in relationships before, where And I've noticed that shift in relationships before. And, I may be an intuitive psychic practitioner, but I'm not a mind reader. I read the vibes, baby. But it's really challenging because this is like an impositional thing. And anything that is impositional is oppressive. And if it is oppressive, it is not natural. So it's like you're trying to put someone in the waffle iron. They've got the metal framework coming around them. They don't know what they've got to do. But then suddenly they're in this construct that is completely foreign and unfamiliar. But it's entirely done through expectation. Now, what would be better would be, instead of expecting someone to just assume, what it is that you like, because not everyone likes the same stuff. And if you like someone, you want to learn what they're into and what they appreciate, so you can do the thing that shows that you're actually like caring about them, and you're bringing the stuff to the door for them that's going to elevate the relationship. This is a spiritual intimacy here. And with this, if they wanted to, they would communicate your needs, communicate what it is that you want, communicate how you want to be treated, communicate what works for you, communicate what doesn't work for you. Because there are so many points of disconnection that the seeds are sown very early in the relationship process, the dating process. So being communicative is really important. For example, one of the big things is like, well, how often do you want to hear from someone? Some people want to hear from their significant other every day. Some people are like, it just text me when you feel like it, but don't let like a whole week go by and I don't hear from you. It's varied. It's not uniform. It's different depending on who you are with and who's involved in that situation. So being more communicative is really key, because then it paves the way for a different kind of intimacy, a deeper form of intimacy, and a more spiritual connection. So, with these different points, and like I said, this is by no means an exhaustive list. I've actually got 15 of them, but I think I'm probably going to do 4 or 5 because I'm trying to not have the episodes go as long at the minute. But, all of this stuff comes down to communication. And we are living in one of the most connected times, if not the most connected time in the human story. And we've forgotten how to talk to each other. And social media is not helping, because you're scrolling and you're seeing like some random like dating advice. And people have used arrogance and entitlement and this idea of being somehow semi-divine as something to be proud of. You know, I am half Scottish, and Glaswegian Scottish at that. And none of this shite would fly with anyone that I've ever met from up there, because there's a sense of openness and a sense of groundedness when it comes to communication in Scotland. And I always found it quite interesting, because my Scottish side of the family would very readily burst the bubble of pretentiousness. And half of this stuff that I see on the internet is so pretentious, it bends my brain, because people are out there looking for connection. People are out there looking for community. This doesn't just have to be like, romantic connection. This stuff applies to other things as well. And if we're so tightly buttoned up on the one hand, we've got all of this expectation, we've got all of this difficult stuff going on in the world. We need more humanity. We need more connection. We need more contact. We've got to find people on the same vibration, the same rhythm, the same frequency, the people that you resonate with, the people that feel like long lost friends from another lifetime, or long lost family from another lifetime. And if we don't communicate openly, it's very hard for us to build those relationships and connections. So, I will tell you a story as we bring this episode to a close. I think we'll bring Dr. Love back again. But anyway, so I am 40, at least for another 2 weeks. There'll be 41. Jesus, what's going on there? About 8 months ago, I met a group of people that I've become very firm friends in that time. And I said to myself, I'm not going to mask around these people because as a neurodiverse person, I always just want to say what's on my mind, you know, and I don't mean that in a way of just saying like some heinous shit and going, I'm a truth teller, and then just affronting people with absolute nonsense. I mean things like, if I see someone and I'm happy to see them, I'll be like, it's lovely to see you today. It's great to see you. Seeing you makes me happy. And I mean it with my whole heart, you know? Or if I have a nice time, I'll be like, I had a really lovely time today. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for including me. And I mean it because I did, you know? And I thought to myself, if I'm going to make friends and connections now, I'm going to try my best to express what's on my heart, you know, and express what's in my mind, and not play silly buggers with communication, not play silly buggers with how I'm feeling. Or if someone asks me how I am and I'm feeling shit, I'm going to be like, I'm not doing so good today, you know, and just be open and honest. And if anything, I think that has helped the bonds grow and deepen. So I've then been like importing that to my other relationships as well, because I don't want to wear the mask. I don't want to wear the mask anymore. You know, life, I've gone through 40 years of life wearing a mask in some respects, and turning a new page of the story just over a year ago, and going off on my own, doing my own thing. I said to myself, there's a lot of things that I want to do differently. And I've been feeling like that for a couple of years, in all honesty, that I want to do things differently, you know? And one of that is just having honesty with people at all times. You know, I don't like liars. I don't like cheats. I don't like people who exploit others. And I think if we have that honesty and clarity of communication, it leads to such better relationships. And you know what? Maybe we won't be crashing out on the internet over people that disagree with us. Or maybe we'll actually be able to band together and stand up to some of the bullies of this world in a more unified voice. There are many, many different positive applications of more mindful, conscious, and thoughtful communication. So, like I was saying, don't listen to people who encourage you to play games. Listen to your heart, listen to yourself. And if someone doesn't vibe with that, that is not your person. If a group of people don't vibe with that, that's not your people. You know, it becomes quite straightforward and simple, but it does require us to be free from the need of approval and free of the desire to fit in, which is a primal, hardwired thing for us all. So if this is new to you, go easy on yourself. You know, don't force this upon yourself, but don't fall into the pattern of games. Don't fall into the pattern of assumption. Don't pull your energy away from someone when you want to be close to them. There's so many different shifts that can happen here, even just with these 4 points that we've discussed today. And we will discuss more as well. But even with those and just those points of communication, it can make a night and day difference, because one of the difficulties of relationships is when anxiety starts to creep in, or worries start to creep in, or we start to template the past onto the present, or we start to project our worries and fears onto the present. Communication solves all of these problems. And people out there telling you to play games with your communication with others in relationships, well, we can just catapult them into the sun. So, there we have a few points about communication in relationships and the world of romance. Because love is love, my friends. Love is the universal life force and the energy that connects all things. And if there is a God, God is most definitely love. So I don't know what the hell these folks are praying to about fire, brimstone, and Armageddon and all this other shit. Yeah. So, if you would like help with your relationships, with your communication, with your engagement with others, or your personal development, spiritual growth, well-being, holistic well-being, all that other jazz, or you just want to come hang out with some cool spiritual folks or get involved in any of the events, do head over to my website, www.alistairballantyne.com, where you can see my list of services and how I can walk beside you on your journey, because that's what I'm here to do. So, my friends, don't let the games that people insist to play in this world, because we have so much to hide from each other because we're hiding from ourselves, don't let this stuff into your life. All right? Have a good one. I love you. Stay soupy. See you later, friends.